Experts speculate that the enormous breach in the ozone layer may have been brought on by the eruption of Tonga's underwater volcano in early 2022. Satellite data shows that this year's hole in the ozone layer above Antarctica has grown to become one of the biggest ever witnessed. A huge underwater volcano that erupted in January of last year shook Tonga and caused tsunami warnings. Even satellite photographs were able to capture the dramatic eruption of the Hunga Hapai volcano, which released smoke and ash into the atmosphere. On September 16, 2023, the ozone hole had grown to a size of over 26 million square kilometers, according to observations made by the Copernicus Sentinel-5P satellite of the European Space Agency, ESA. According to the data, the seasonal hole has grown to be one of the biggest ever recorded. Prior to this, the biggest ozone hole maximum took place in 2000 and covered about 28.4 million square kilometers. According to ESA, the hole, which scientists refer to as an ozone-depleting area, has grown to around 3 times the size of Brazil. How the ozone hole is monitored was described by the Space Agency. The size of the ozone hole increased from August through October, peaking between mid-September and mid-October, it was reported, and its dimensions alter often. As stratospheric temperatures rise in the southern hemisphere, the polar vortex starts to wane and eventually disappear. The ESA predicted that ozone levels would return to normal by the end of December. In essence, the ozone layer is a portion of the stratosphere that absorbs the majority of UV light from the sun. Ozone, a kind of oxygen molecule with 3 atoms instead of 2, is present in high concentrations in the ozone layer. The first Copernicus satellite specifically designed to monitor our atmosphere is Copernicus Sentinel-5P, also known as Sentinel-5 Precursor. It debuted in October of that year. It is a member of the fleet of Copernicus Sentinel missions being developed by ESA for the Environmental Monitoring Program of the European Union. Diego Loyola, a senior scientist at the DLR, was quoted by the ESA as saying, "The Sentinel-5P total ozone products have an accuracy at the percentage level compared with ground-based data, and this allows us to precisely monitor the ozone layer and its evolution." The European satellite sensor's nearly 3-decade-long global ozone data record is being extended by the TROPOMI measurements. But what is ozone layer? This is the second layer of Earth's atmosphere. The ozone layer is a part of it. The stratosphere is the layer of air that surrounds Earth and keeps it safe. The name stratosphere comes from the fact that it is stratified or layered. The stratosphere gets colder as you go higher up. The stratosphere gets warmer as you go higher because ozone gases in the top layers soak up the sun's strong ultraviolet rays. There are only a few molecules of ozone in the air, about 3 for every 10 million molecules of air. But it's very important. The ozone layer soaks up bits of energy from the sun that hit Earth like a sponge. Some of the sun's energy is necessary for life, but too much of it can hurt living things. The ozone layer protects all living things on Earth. Ozone molecules are made up of 3 joined oxygen atoms, and they are naturally breaking down and putting back together all the time. But CFCs in the air make it hard for ozone to come back together after it's been broken up. What would have happened if the ozone hole wasn't fixed? To put it simply, living on Earth would be hell. The world is a desolate place in the year 2084. The thick smog that hangs over empty cityscapes blocks out the sun and keeps plants from growing. There is also no animals to be found. Only people, and most of them die soon after becoming adults from a very dangerous skin disease. The life expectancy would be reduced to 25. The plot isn't just another bleak science fiction story. People who study these things sometimes talk about the world avoided, or the world that might have been if people hadn't fixed the ozone hole. This dark future is mostly talked about in academic settings. However, the UN Ozone Secretariat recently worked with the South African production company Rooftop to bring it to life for young people who don't remember a time when the ozone problem was all over the news. People's reaction to the ozone crisis is one of the few examples of a problem being solved in the history of the environment. In the 1970s and 1980s, there was more and more proof that chemicals found in hairspray, freezers, and air conditioners were eating a huge hole in the Earth's ozone layer. This layer blocks harmful ultraviolet radiation from reaching the surface for protection. In the late 1980s, countries across the world signed the Montreal Protocol, a global agreement to phase out so-called ozone-depleting substances like chlorofluorocarbons. This was done because they were afraid of what the future would be like without any sunscreen in the atmosphere. The ozone hole has been slowly getting better since then. The UN says it will be fully recovered by the middle of the century. And again, everyone forgot about it. On the other hand, things might have been very different if the scientific proof that man-made chemicals cause ozone loss wasn't strong enough, or if ozone engineers, yes, there were those, were able to stop the Montreal Protocol. Computer models show that in the world we avoided, ozone levels would drop by about 70% by the middle of the 21st century, making UV rays twice as strong at Earth's surface. Skin cancer and cataracts would become much more common. These two conditions cause about half of all blindness in the world. The extra UV light would hurt crops, which could cause food shortages around the world. And it would have a chain reaction of terrible effects on wild plants and animals that have evolved to live in the low UV light that the ozone layer creates. Large amounts of carbon could be released into the air, which would make global warming worse. However, many plants could die back. This extra UV light would probably speed up the breakdown of biological matter, making things even worse. This new sun would be so fierce that even man-made building materials would break down quickly. We might resort to dangerous geoengineering ideas in the end because people would be so desperate to find a solution. Spreading a chemical that makes smog and blocks UV light into the sky is one of these last-ditch efforts that fails badly in the future of Reset Earth, leading to the spread of the GROW, a skin disease that is even deadlier than cancer. After a few years, most young people who get GROW die. The first signs of infection show up in their late teens or early 20s. The story was based on many conversations with scientists of the Environmental Effects Assessment Panel, one of the advisory panels for the Montreal Protocol, exploring the different effects of increased UV radiation on people and the environment. Stephanie Egger-Haysmith, a communications officer for the UN Ozone Secretariat, told The Science of Fiction. Before the COVID-19 outbreak, the idea of a future ozone crisis combined with a public health crisis was already being thought about. However, as time went on and the effects of the coronavirus became clearer, it fed into further ideas around the script. He went on to say, the main idea was that our Earth, with all of its complicated global environmental problems and how they are connected, is in a balance that can be upset if we don't protect it through knowledge, science, and working together. How long will it be before the ozone layer is gone? The Montreal Protocol deal has done its job and lowered the amount of emissions that damage the ozone layer to the point where ozone depletion has turned into ozone recovery. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, says that by the middle of the 21st century, stratospheric ozone levels will return to where they were before the 1980s. So stop counting down the days until the ozone goes away. Also, they think the ozone hole in Antarctica will close in the 2060s or 2070s. While this is good news, it doesn't mean that stratospheric ozone loss is over for good. After making progress in the recovery, we can't let countries loosen up on the rules of the Montreal Protocol. Also, experts need to keep looking for new threats to the stratospheric ozone layer, like dichloromethane emissions, and help cut them down. Do we have the ability to breathe ozone? In the stratosphere, ozone is good because it blocks harmful UVA and UVB radiation from the sun, but people would not breathe it in. The CDC says that too much ozone can lead to headaches, coughing, a dry throat, shortness of breath, a heavy feeling in the chest, and fluid in the lungs. A lot of ozone exposure, or being exposed to it all the time, can also cause more serious diseases like asthma. As Ronald Reagan says, preservation of our environment is not a liberal or conservative challenge. It's common sense. You can suggest topics you want to see next in the comment section below. Please subscribe to Weather Collapse if you want to know more, and be updated on the latest news about natural calamities or disasters happening all over the world, and don't forget to like today's video. We'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.